Hey everyone, happy Sunday. Today is a special day because in a few hours after this service is done, we'll be actually seeing each other for the first time in person at our long time no see day. It'll be a drive-by or drive-through, and you'll be able to meet and greet all the teachers and all the pastors here at Seed Church, and so we're super excited. Today we're going to be looking at the book of Luke chapter 15 verses 11 to 24. And this is the story of the prodigal son, and I'm sure a lot of you guys are already familiar with this story. And so I just wanted to share my heart and the heart that God is pressing through this story. In Luke chapter 15 verse 11 it says, "And he said, there was a man who had 2 sons, and the younger of them said to his father, 'Father, give me the share of the property that is coming to me.' And he divided his property among them. Not many days later, this younger son gathered all he had and took a journey into a far country, and there he squandered his property in reckless living. And when he had spent everything, a severe famine arose in that country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him into his field to feed pigs. And he was longing to be fed with the pods that the pigs ate, and no one gave him anything. But when he came to himself, he said, 'How many of my father's hired servants have more than enough bread, but I perish here with hunger? I will arise and go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me as one of your hired servants.' And he arose and came to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and felt compassion and ran and embraced him and kissed him. And the son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his servants, 'Bring quickly the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand and shoes on his feet. And bring the fattened calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this my son was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found,' and they began to celebrate." The story of the prodigal son that we're so familiar with, there are a few things before we go into the main point that I wanted to point out. And previous to this story of the lost son, there's 2 other parables that Jesus tells his disciples. It's the parable of the lost sheep and the parable of the lost coin. And the parable of the lost sheep is that the shepherd had 100 sheep, and one of the sheep went astray. And the shepherd, he went and left the 99 to search for that one sheep. And when he found that one sheep, he rejoiced and was joyous over finding that one sheep. And the parable of the lost coin is about an old woman who lost a coin and searched her whole home to find this coin. And once she found this coin, she was rejoicing over this found coin. And likewise, there's a certain theme that I feel that Jesus is trying to teach us through these parables. And as we study and examine the prodigal son and the story and the depth of what happened to this son, what was this son going through? What was in his thoughts? What was in his mind as he asks his father for his inheritance? How many of us as sons and daughters of your parents can go to them and say, "Mom, Dad, give me my inheritance so that I may go and make a living for myself"? And this story of the prodigal son, it's about a young man who asks his father for his inheritance. And usually an inheritance is given after someone is deceased. And so when he's asking his father for his inheritance, it's basically saying, "Dad, I don't care about you. I just want my money, and I want to go away with my money." The parable of the prodigal son begins with a young man who asks his father for his inheritance. And usually inheritance is given after someone is deceased, like a will. But regardless, this father willingly gives this young son the money, despite the emotions of sorrow or pain that he may have. And this young man goes and takes this money and goes into the city and squanders it all away in eating and drinking and just having a good time. But after he spent all his money, a famine came and struck the country. And this young man who spent all his money had nothing to eat. and nowhere to stay and no clothes to wear. And so he goes off and finds a job, and this job is to feed the pig. And how desperate this young man was that he was desperate enough to eat the pods of food that was given to the pigs. And as this young man who's hit the bottomest part of his life, that he couldn't find his purpose or hope in eating, drinking, partying, or whatever he did with all that money, he came into the realization that there is a place where he could call home. And that was the house of his father. And despite how difficult it was for this young man to muster up the courage to go and face his father, because he had nothing else, because he was just dirt poor and no food to eat. And as this young man takes these heavy steps back to his father's home, in the far distance, he sees his father waiting for him. And as soon as his father was able to see his son, this father runs up to him and embraces him and kisses him. And you know, I can imagine just that emotion that was going on in that moment. And brothers and sisters, how does the story relate to us today of the prodigal son? Once that young man came back home, the father commanded his servants to bring a robe, a ring, a fattened calf, and to celebrate because his son who was once lost was saved again. And this story of the prodigal son, it's so important for us as believers, as sons and daughters of God to understand, because we are faced with so many temptations. Brothers and sisters, you and I are like these two sons. There's so many perspectives to view this story. The perspective of the father, the perspective of the younger son, the perspective of the older son. But today we're going to see in the eyes of the younger son. Because many times us as young people, we have these ambitions and these dreams. We have these thoughts of wanting to be successful. We have these thoughts of wanting to fill these voids or emptiness that's inside of our hearts. We have these willing and wants and desires that are deep inside of our hearts that want to go after the worldly sins and temptations. Just like this young man who was enticed by money and the things that this world had to offer. He realizes that at the end, nothing in this world will last forever. His money, his popularity, his status, his food, whatever it may have been, it did not last. And what this story is trying to tell us is that once this young man, he realized that he was the son of his father, he was able to go back home. And brothers and sisters, that's the message of hope for us today. That you may have lost yourself in this world. That you may have lost yourself in temptation and in sin. You may have lost in your emotions and you may have been lost in anger or depression or anxiety. You may have been lost to the lies of the enemy. But once you remember that you are the son and daughter of the Most High God, the God who created the heavens and the earth, He is waiting for us. And all we need to do as His children is run back home into the arms of the amazing Father who will embrace us and kiss us and welcome us back home. So brothers and sisters, have you lost yourself in this world? Have you lost yourself and forgot who God is? Well, today is a reminder that it's never too late. It's never too late to come into the house of the Father. It's never too late to realize that you are a true, precious son and daughter of God. So I encourage you, brothers and sisters, wherever you may be in life, whatever difficult situation, whatever turmoil, dream, ambition, wherever you are, maybe you're out squandering the money that the Father has given to you. Maybe you're enjoying life right now and you're so blinded by the treasures of this world that you can't see. But hear me out. Hear this message today, and may it be a reminder to you that whenever you lose yourself, whenever you're lost, lonely, scared, the Father is waiting for you. So I encourage you, why not make today the day that you come back to the Father's home, into the embrace of the most loving, the most amazing and wonderful Father that we have in heaven. Come into His arms and be healed, be reconciled, and be restored to your identity as a son and daughter of God.